Hello all, welcome to my humble abode, my little corner of the internet. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about Hasan Piker. Recently he's been getting more media attention, and as we know, with the corporate owned media and the state influenced media, we always get a manufactured narrative. They'll say someone creates controversy when there isn't anything bubbling up from the bottom. They'll just claim that there's controversy and people will think that there is. And I think Hasan Piker is a prime example of such a scenario because he, well, specifically I want to talk about his phrase that America deserved 9/11. Now, I think a lot of people disingenuously try to imply that that means he's celebrating 9/11 or the loss of life. Um, and I personally, as someone who speaks English, think that that's just a fundamental misunderstanding of English linguistics, if you think that. And I don't think that those personalities are being honest with themselves or with you when they say that it's controversial, because it's just a fact. If you step on a rake and it hits you in the head, or you throw a boomerang and it comes back around and hits you in the head, that's not wrong to say that you deserved it. You literally did. It's not celebrating that it happened, but it's saying that you deserved it. You threw it, came back to you, and it hit you in the head. Or you stepped on a rake, it hit you in the head. Same thing with 9/11. We funded the Mujahideen. We got involved in a foreign country. We funded Osama bin Laden, and that came back around to hit us. And by virtue of action, reaction, we deserved it because we were messing with forces that cannot be predicted, controlled, or anything. Humanity can't be predicted or controlled. You could have buildings, cities full of analysts. You could have hyper intelligent AI. You will never, no matter what, be able to predict someone's behavior or how systems will evolve, complex systems of individuals that interact and speak to each other and have ideas and novel ideas. It's just fundamentally impossible. And even if you do predict something, you don't know if at the last second someone will decide not to do that. At the very last second. You can't predict that sort of thing. And it's funny when you hear all these military analysts talking about, for example, the Iraq War, Afghanistan, Iraq, or whatever. By the way, I'm sorry. I apologize on behalf of America for killing over 1 million innocent civilians in the Middle East through that war. It was really a mass culling of literally innocent civilians. But it's funny when you hear those people talk about their idea seems to be that we weren't wrong to intervene and get involved. We just didn't quite do it well enough. It wasn't holistic enough. We didn't analyze it enough. We didn't think it through well enough to actually succeed. When what really comes to mind for me is the quote from the movie War Games from the 1980s, where the AI is playing simulated nuclear war against the Soviet Union. And in the end, it goes through all the permutations, and it says, "What an interesting game. The only way to win is not to play." And so, we should apply that logic. It perfectly makes sense to apply the same logic to interventions, to getting involved, to doing CIA covert ops, supporting this rebel group, that rebel group, the regime, whatever, doing colored revolutions, Arab Springs. We shouldn't be getting involved in that sort of stuff at all, no matter what. We should simply be adopting a stance on international relations and global geopolitics that I think is objectively correct, which is the Chinese and Russian stance, which is we don't care what you do. We can negotiate with whoever, we can trade with whoever on our own terms, on your terms, but what you do in your country is none of our problem. It's none of our concern. We don't have a right to an opinion. I think most people would agree. If you approach it from the standpoint of treat others the way you want to be treated, I wouldn't want some other country to come in here and tell us what we can or can't do. It's none of their business. They have no right or even they're not even entitled to an opinion on it. You know. And I think most people would agree, no matter how much they might disagree with some president or other, the minute a foreign country gets involved and starts trying to say, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, we should get involved, or support some proxy group or whatever, immediately most people would join the side of whoever that country is against. And that's my experience, for example, with the Ukraine war in Russia. As soon as the sanctions started, as soon as the European nations got involved, from my experience of relatives, family, friends in Russia, people I've met, spoken to, in pretty much 99.9% of cases, the people aren't, reacting to sanctions on Russia by saying, "Oh, dang that Putin! We have to get him out of power so that we can stop the sanctions. We have to put pressure on our government." Nobody thinks that way. This is just a delusional, like, if you're like some egghead in the State Department who just creates like this sort of little theoretical framework of how people react to sanctions. Maybe that might make sense, but that's not how it works in the real world. In the real world, people get upset. In Russia, in particular, I can speak from personal experience, they get upset at America, not Putin. That just makes them support Putin more. But nowadays, I know from personal experience in Russia, a lot of people consider the Ukrainian regime a terrorist regime, for example. They're upset that a common refrain that you hear in Russia right now is people are upset that Ukraine is bombing civilian targets, refineries, whatever, in Russia. And a lot of people in Russia are loudly and publicly stating, cafes, public transport, social media, this is all you could look up for yourself, but they're upset that Putin isn't doing more. They're upset. There's videos on YouTube of Russians complaining, why aren't we, going and bombing the UK, Germany, France? Why aren't we nuking them? They're getting involved. They're sharing data with Ukraine, and they're very upset. Most Russians are more radical than Putin. And so this follows to Iran as well, to North Korea, I'm sure, as well. I personally don't believe, this idea that there's only 20 approved haircuts in North Korea and everyone hates it so much there. If everyone hated it so much there, they would have overthrown the Kims. It's that simple. They would have overthrown them by now. Same thing with Iran. People like to point out the figure of 36,000 dead protesters in January, I believe it was. But if you look at the population of Iran, 90-something million people, 1% is 9 million, 1/10% is 900,000, 1/100% is 90,000. So we're really talking about 2 or 3 thousandths of a percent. And I don't even trust that figure to begin with. I mean, first, how can we trust the media when it's manufacturing consent all the time? That means everything is suspect that the media says. At literally everything. 2, how do we know that these people weren't agitated by undercover CIA agents or color revolution agitators? We don't know that. I'm not saying all of them were color revolution agitators, but a few people can agitate thousands of people. That's a pretty fair ratio. And they can also fabricate news. I mean, we live in the era of fabricated news, and we have been for many decades. But going back to my main point, in terms of 9/11, we should be absolutely blaming not just Osama bin Laden and the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, not the Taliban wasn't involved, but specifically I think most of the blame lies with the US-backed Wahhabist dictatorship of Saudi Arabia. We back all these brutal dictatorships. We obviously to fund, to keep the petrodollar in place to fight against this person or that person. It's good to have people in your pocket, so to speak, which I think is also a mistake. We should just leave them alone. Whatever happens to them happens, and be disinterested, amoral merchants. Or just be like, we'll trade with whoever. We don't care. It's none of our business. You do whatever you want in your country. We'll just trade with whoever's in power. It doesn't matter to us. It's none of our concern. And so 9/11 was the boomerang coming back to hit us in the face. And the military analysts seem to not learn that lesson continuously. Every time it happens, the boomerang hits us in the head, the rake hits us in the head. They're like, oh, we just didn't do it quite right enough. Where the actual answer is to not do it at all. Not to get involved, not to do anything, not to support one group or another group, just to, none of our business, none of our concern. And so 9/11, Hasan is absolutely right that we deserve 9/11. That is an objective fact. That is not disputable. We meddled in Afghanistan, and that directly, well, indirectly, you might say, because it wasn't possible to predict, it indirectly manifested in 9/11 happening. And all the analysts missed it, all the intelligence agencies missed it, and that's that. But it was beneficial to the evil ones in power to have this huge surveillance state built after 9/11. Which I'm also very much against. We shouldn't have a TSA, we shouldn't have identification, we shouldn't have any of this stuff. We shouldn't have surveillance. Neither corporations nor governments should have either the means or the capability or the right to surveil, track, or identify anyone. And so I think even if they had known, they would have, I think they did know, but they allowed it to happen for a reason. But regardless of that point, we absolutely deserve 9/11 because we meddled in the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Soviet Union's invading Afghanistan, so what? Who cares? It's not our country. None of our business. Doesn't matter. If you think that it does, well, you get 9/11s happening. You get the Strait of Hormuz closing, which is another prime example. The Strait of Hormuz was perfectly fine and open before two nuclear-armed nations decided to bully a smaller non-nuclear-armed nation in an unprovoked act of aggression. And honestly, I'm glad that Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz. I'm glad they're not fighting fairly. I'm glad they're fighting asymmetrically. And honestly, yeah, they should deserve to control the Strait of Hormuz. They should deserve to have nuclear weapons. Everyone should have nuclear weapons. We shouldn't build a golden dome because we need parity, that every country can strike back, so that nobody gets involved anywhere for any reason. Honestly, unironically, bring back the Treaty of Westphalia. Bring back not Treaty of Westphalia, the Westphalian Principle, I think it's called, where every country is just left to do literally whatever it wants within its borders. None of our business. We wash our hands. Knock yourself out. And I think that applies to Israel as well. A controversial opinion. But, a little side note, I think that should apply to Israel within its legitimate borders, which is the 1947 pre-Nakba borders. Or a two-state solution where it's split evenly down the middle, and that's it. And there's a demilitarized zone between the two parts, and both of them are demilitarized. Both nations are demilitarized, both Israel and Palestine. But yeah, that's basically all I wanted to say. Deuces.